Hey guys, it's time to do the June block, and we're going back to doing just some of the flower blocks. And with the quilting, the only difference in this block, we are adding the glitter sheets, and then we're also going to add the little rhinestone studs on the end of the little stamen here. So I've already stitched off one block. We have to make two of them again. I've done one, so let's get started on the next one. Okay, so out of the embellishment kit, you're going to need the June bag, and it has the big piece of glitter sheet. I've already used part of it on the first design, and then it has the little bag of the little rhinestones that we'll use here in a minute. Then in your kit, your fabric kit, you're going to have two of all of these. So you'll have two of the background pieces, two of the yellow, and then there's four whites, but two of them are the bigger size, and then two of them will be the smaller size. And then you'll need to cut two pieces of batting that both of them need to be the 6x8 size. And I've gone ahead and I have hooped up a layer of the poly mesh or the lightweight mesh stabilizer, and we're going into the June folder, and we're going to go into the background quilting designs first. And this is the spring 6, and we want the block by block. And then we want the 6x8 size. So now again, on this machine, I can see the 6x8. Some of the machines you might not. So remember, in the January video, I showed how to pull these designs out of the USB stick, or separate them out so you'll on your computer, so you'll know which one you're needing to go get. So you can refer back to that video if you want to, but we're going to go get the 6x8. I'm going to go ahead also and add the design to the top of this. Again, you can do it in two steps. We are going to have to move the design down, so I'm going to show you once again how to do that. So we're going to just push add, then go back to the USB and go find our design again. This time we want to go into the embroidery files, and there's only one design, and then we're going to set that, and then we're going to move it down. So I'm just going to watch right here. I want the bottom of this design to meet the very bottom line on the block by block quilting design. So I'm going to go into edit and then into move, and then I'm just going to do my down arrow. And see, it's coming down a little bit farther. I want that bottom of that design to match the bottom of the line on the quilting, and that gets it set up. And then I'll just send that to the embroidery screen. I've threaded up with the off-white thread. I think it's parchment, yeah, is what it's called, to do the quilting. And we're going to stitch off that first placement line for our batting. Now the way I'm doing it, remember, we're not going to lay the bigger piece of batting down. Our batting is already cut to size, so I can forward through that tack down. So we're going over to the machine, that plus and minus, go down, or plus one spool of thread, or forward one whole section, and now it's going to stitch off the placement line for the fabric. And while it's stitching this, I'm going to go spray the back of my batting and the back of my background fabric with the 505 spray. Okay, now I'm going to lay that batting down inside the inner box, and it's sticky. And then lay the fabric down right side up, just so that it covers the outside box. Remember, it's oversized. And now it's going to stitch the fabric tack down. And just remember, on our instructions, we're doing the block by block quilting. So it went and it told us here we needed the 6x8 quilting design. It's saying the special alignment. We're lining up the bottom of the design with the bottom of the quilting design. And then once we're done doing the quilting, we're going to skip to step 3. So because we're doing the block by block quilting, we don't need to do any of this. So then that's going to get us to this next page. But I still need to do the quilting. So it just did the fabric tack down. Now we're going to stitch the quilting. And this is going to take about 3 minutes, and we'll come back. But this is the quilting design, zoom in on it. It's the one that has the little mushroom and the snail and the bee on it. So it's a cute design, but we'll come back when it's done doing this. Okay, so it finished quilting, and while it was quilting, I realized I forgot to tell you some of the prep work. So on your glitter sheet, there is a plastic film kind of topping that you need to be sure and peel off. And then in the instructions, it said to iron the SF101 or the fusible backing onto the back of the background piece. And then also, I went ahead and ironed it onto the back of all 3 of my applique pieces, because these are going to be laying on top of the glitter sheet, like right here, and I didn't want that showing through. So I went ahead and ironed the SF101 onto the back of those also. Now, back on the machine, it's finished stitching the quilting, and so because we're doing the block by block quilting, we do not need to stitch off this next placement line. So that placement line is if you're not doing the block by block quilting. But because we are, we're going to forward through that, and that's just a tack down for your fabric, which we don't need. And then now it's going to start stitching the parts of the flower. And so I am just using the darker pink color thread, and so I'm just going to thread up with this and start stitching. Find my scissors. So the last thing that stitched off is the light pink color here, and that was step 5 of the instructions on page 3. Go ahead and leave that light pink color thread in the machine, and what it's going to stitch off next is the placement line for the glitter sheets. But we're going to do the placement line and the tack down in the light pink color so that it shows up. Okay, and then I'm just, like I said, I've already used part of the glitter sheet on the first one, so I'm just going to lay it down kind of like that. Make sure you're covering up all of that placement line, and you might want to tape this down because it does kind of shift on you pretty easily. Make sure I'm coming up high enough, or I'm just going to hold it with my fingers, and then it's going to stitch the tack down. And this is a raw edge, so all it's going to do, the tack down, is the final stitching. It's not going to do a cover stitch, and so that's why it's going over it like with the 3 stitches, and then you'll just trim right up next to that tack down. Okay, and then after it's done doing that tack down, just go in and trim both of these away. Just be real careful, don't cut your stitches. and we'll come back when I'm done. Okay, after you trim the glitter sheet, you're going to keep the pink thread in the machine, and now it's just going to stitch the little detail inside the glitter sheets. After it does the pink detail in the glitter sheet, then we're just going to thread up with the green colors, and we just do the dark green, the light green, and then the dark green again. And that will be step 9, 10, and 11 on your instructions on page 3. Okay, after it's done doing the stems and the leaves in the green, then we're going to do steps 12, 13, and 14 in the yellow thread. So I've threaded up with that, and it's just going to do the placement line, the tack down, and the cover stitch for that yellow flower. So that's where we will be using this fabric. So it'll do the placement line first. Now we're doing the tack down. Once we trimmed the fabric, now it's just doing the cover stitch. Step number 15 is stitching the little kind of periwinkle blue flowers. Now, the next thing that it's going to stitch off it's going to be the placement line and the tack down for these white flowers. There's one here, and then there's one down here at the bottom. And in the picture here, it is showing to do that in the white thread. And I had a happy accident. And so what I did when I was looking at the picture, I thought, well, I really want it to show up a little bit more. So I thought what I'm going to do is the placement line, the tack down, and the cover stitch in the pink thread. So I started doing that on this one, okay, on my sample here. I did the placement line in the pink. I laid the fabric down. I did the tack down in the pink. I went in and I trimmed my fabric, and then I decided, I think I saw a picture on the Kimberbells and Fellas of the finished block, and I thought, okay, no, I like the white cover stitch, so I threaded the machine back up in the white. But what happened is that pink straight stitch is kind of showing up underneath my white thread, and I kind of like that. So it kind of makes it show up a little bit more, but it still has the white cover stitch. So I'm going to do that same little happy accident on this next block. So I've threaded up with the light pink thread, and we're doing the placement line for both of the white flowers. So it's going to do one up here and one down here. Okay, now it's going to do, you use the little white piece of fabric for this bottom flower, and it's going to stitch the tack down for this one first, and then it wants to jump up here and stitch the tack down for the bigger white piece of fabric. So, but I'm going to show you what I did. So I'm going to lay the smaller white piece of fabric over this. I still have the pink thread in the machine, and it's going to do this tack down. Now it wants to automatically go back up there and stitch the top flower, but I'm going to stop the machine. So as soon as it cuts the thread, I'm going to push the stop button, and you think, oh, it didn't stop, but it does. So don't push the button again. So just push it one time. That stops it. Now I can adjust my fabric where it needs to be. And what you could do is just, you know, kind of take the hoop off the machine and tape both of these pieces down. But I just stop it and then start it again. And now it's going to stitch the tack down of the white, or the top flower. Now we're just going to trim both of these flowers. And these flower petals are kind of fun to do, let me tell you. And now I threaded back up with the white, and it's stitching the cover stitch. Okay, after it stitches the white cover stitch, on page 3 of your instructions, we're just going to keep stitching number 19, 20, and 21, and that's just going to be the center of the yellow flower, the pink detail on the white flowers, and then the yellow centers of the white flowers. So we're just going to keep stitching those, and then we'll be done. When it's done stitching, then you're just going to take it out of the hoop and you're going to trim it down to that 6.5 by 8.5. Okay. And then I went ahead and, because I knew we were using the little Hot Fix crystals, and I brought my Easy Glitzer up here, but then I read the instructions. At the very end of the instructions, it says that we're going to apply these later at the end of the year when we start putting the quilt all together. So save your crystals, put those back in your embellishment kit, but when we get to that point, if you do have one of these Easy Glitzers, the Hot Fix Glitzer, that's what we will use to do that. So now we're done.